Cyberpunk 2077 is quite possibly the biggest blunder I've seen the gaming industry experience in recent and distant memory. And I've seen my fair share of overhyped releases over the years, but nothing quite at this scale. Everybody's got their own overhyped disappointment. For some it was Fable, for others it was Spore, for me it was Watch Dogs and Destiny. Yeah, 2 in the same year. For the folks after me, it was No Man's Sky, although you really should have known better. And now for many, it's Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I haven't finished my playthrough of the PC version for our review. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you want to know when that drops. But so far, my first impressions are doused with disappointment, as the game is clearly unfinished. While Cyberpunk 2077's merits as a game will be judged in its own separate review, the context surrounding the game's release, along with the fallout, has been a completely different case entirely. As of Thursday, December 17th, just 1 week after the game launched, Cyberpunk 2077 was delisted from the PlayStation Network, with Sony offering full refunds to anyone who bought the game digitally and wanted one. A major platform delisting a game in the first place is a rarity, though it does happen. Remember when Nintendo delisted Meme Run from the Wii U eShop? Yeah, me too. But Cyberpunk 2077 ain't Meme Run, or at the very least, it wasn't advertised as a meme run. In fact, Cyberpunk 2077 was not only the most hyped game of the year, it might have been the most hyped game of all time. Its pre-orders were over 8 million, and it was predicted to sell over 30 million copies. Cyberpunk 2077 had a 16-quadrant appeal, it felt like. Its marketing hooked everyone, from the hardcore RPG crowd to complete normies. Needless to say, a console publisher delisting a game from their storefront of this pomp and circumstance is unprecedented. So how did we get here? Some would say it starts with the very announcement of the game back in May of 2012. However, I don't think that would be accurate. The infamous Cyberpunk trailer I saw in fucking high school was more of a proof of concept CGI trailer than anything resembling a game in active development, as CD Projekt Red was full hands on deck for developing and shipping The Witcher 3 along with its post-launch content. The trailer even ends on a very cheeky coming when it's done release date, a sign that the game was very far out as far as development goes. So in reality, the game only had about 3 to maybe 4 years of active development time, but there have been plenty of AAA quality games developed in the same period of time that have come out significantly better than this, so that still doesn't explain how we got the game we did. Personally, I believe the trouble started at E3 2019, when it was announced that Cyberpunk 2077 was going to be coming out April 16th, 2020. Knowing what we know now, it's pretty humorous to think of that game coming out all the way back in April, and it seems CD Projekt Red realized the same, and on January 16th of 2020, pushed the game back to September 17th. Let's take a look at what they said back in their announcement. They say in the post that the game is complete and playable, and that they want Cyberpunk 2077 to be our crowning achievement for this generation. Notice how they mention this generation, as at the start of 2020, the hype around the now current gen consoles, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S, was starting to build. It's also important to note that 2 months after this first delay, the whole world went into lockdown. Now, the effects that the pandemic had on the gaming industry is for a completely separate video way down the line, and we really don't know the specifics on how it affected the workflow of Cyberpunk 2077, but I believe it's fair to speculate that it did trip up their final months of development to some capacity. That's because the game got delayed again on June 18th, 2020, pushing the September 17th date to November 19th, 2020. Their delay message reads, "Those of you who are familiar with the way we make games know that we won't ship something which is not ready. Ready when it's done is not just a phrase we say because it sounds right, it's something we live by even when we know we'll take the heat for it. At the same time, we are fully aware that making such a decision cost us your trust, and trading trust for additional time is one of the hardest decisions a game developer can make." CD Projekt Red also states in the blog that the primary reason for this delay is to mainly balance game mechanics and fix a lot of bugs. After the second delay, all was quiet on the Western Front until late September, where it was reported by Bloomberg that CD Projekt Red was going to be making 6-day work weeks mandatory until the game's launch on November 19th. Unfortunately, crunch is so commonplace in the video game industry that a studio implementing crunch weeks before a game's release isn't newsworthy in and of itself. But what made this a notable story was that CD Projekt Red specifically promised that its dev team would not be subjected to any crunch. Studio head Adam Badowski wrote that we've extended all other possible means of navigating the situation. Keep this in mind. A week later, it was announced that Cyberpunk 2077 went gold, a piece of video game jargon that means the game is being shipped off to be printed on physical disc. At this point, many Cyberpunk fans still looking forward to the game saw the end in sight. Fast forward again to October 27th, the game gets delayed again, now slated for a final, official, seriously serious December 10th, 2020 release date. A mere 21-day delay came as a surprise to almost everyone, as it's pretty unprecedented for a game to get delayed after going gold. What makes this delay even more interesting is on October 26th, the day before the delay was announced, a Twitter user tweeted at the official Cyberpunk 2077 account asking if the game was in fact coming on November 19th, with a response reaffirming that it won't be getting delayed. This 25th hour delay was extremely suspicious to say the least. In the post announcing this delay, CD Projekt Red highlights that their biggest challenge is trying to ship 9 versions of the game, those of course being the PC, PS4, PS4 Pro, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox One X, Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X, and Stadia versions. They also say in the post that Cyberpunk 2077 evolved towards almost being a next-gen title somewhere along the way, so we need to make sure everything works well and every version runs smoothly. They also announced that because they've already gone gold, there will be a sizable Day Zero patch. Fast forward to a couple days before launch, when the review embargo lifts and the public starts seeing review videos and scores from major gaming outlets and influencers. The game is reviewed very well, mostly receiving 8s and 9s, with the occasional 7 out of 10, with most reviews highlighting some serious bugs during their respective playtimes. But these reviews don't tell the whole story, as CD Projekt Red employed some downright draconian stipulations in the review embargo for Cyberpunk 2077, with the big one being that reviewers could only use provided CDPR-approved B-roll as footage to use in their reviews, and that you wouldn't be able to use any of your own recorded gameplay. The game before launch was also reviewed entirely on PC, as those were the only review codes provided. The true nature of the console ports of Cyberpunk 2077 weren't unveiled until the public got its hands on the game on December 10th, 2020. Launch day was inundated with clips of frustrated streamers, awful bugs, and horrible performance displayed all over the internet. The vast drop in quality between the high-end PC gameplay we were used to seeing in Night City Wires and reviews compared to the base console versions was extreme. CD Projekt Red, a couple days later on December 14th, released an announcement apologizing to gamers for hiding the base PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game prior to the release, and that if you wanted to get a refund, you could use the refund systems of the PlayStation Network and Xbox, or your brick-and-mortar store where you bought your physical copy from. Despite the fact that neither Sony nor Microsoft have the infrastructure in place to even accept digital refunds in the first place. A couple days after this announcement, people found out that Sony pulled the game from the PlayStation Network entirely, with the official Cyberpunk Twitter confirming so, stating that they are working hard to bring it back to the PSN as soon as possible. And, as the time of writing this video, Sony, Microsoft, Best Buy, and even GameStop are all issuing full refunds of Cyberpunk 2077 on console. Oh, and CDPR is facing 4 class action lawsuits, one of which being spearheaded by an investor/attorney with the company. So, what the hell actually happened here? To see a studio as well beloved in the gaming industry as CD Projekt Red fall so far from grace in a matter of days has essentially been the most interesting gaming news of the year, and this was a console launch year. I can only speculate based on the information we have available publicly, as I have no insider connections or anything like that, but I believe all of the failings of this game fall to poor management along with a completely borked production pipeline, with some assumed general work from home struggles too. Ideally, what should have happened when the game was delayed a second time in the middle of June was for CD Projekt Red to fully come out and TBA this game well into 2021, attributing the delay to the pandemic, as well as drop support for the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game and go all in on being a full next-gen title. It's clear from the delay announcements as well as the product we got that CD Projekt Red just couldn't handle development for all these different systems. Compared to their last major release, The Witcher 3, which was only developed for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC, this same team had to produce 3 times as many versions for Cyberpunk 2077. It's understandable that the game's scope expanded beyond what was capable on the 8th and 8.5 generations of hardware, but because of that, those versions should have been axed. I think this would have made fans actually really excited to know that Cyberpunk 2077 wasn't going to be held back by old consoles, and the hype would have still been there. But I can wax poetic about how I think it should happen all I want, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I'm a 23-year-old asshole making video game videos in his bedroom. I don't know what it takes to run the biggest publicly traded video game company in Poland, and I'm not going to act like I do. And please let me make this clear, this video is not a defense of CD Projekt Red or the state of Cyberpunk 2077 in any way, but more as an overview of the whole situation, just trying to make sense of it all. To not only release those console versions in the actively unplayable state they are in, but to also purposefully hide those lesser versions of the game from the press and public before release is some of the most scummiest, egregious shit I've seen happen with the game release. But with all that said, I do have a massive amount of empathy for the development team over at CD Projekt Red. It's a big meme in the game dev scene that nobody can point out more bugs and issues with the game than the people that actually made it. I can't fathom the daily grind for months of trying to make this game as good as possible and it just not coming together, all because of forces outside of your control. Looking back at the very first delay in January, it states that the game is in a complete state, which I can't help but find sad. I played enough Cyberpunk 2077 and know that this was not the end product they set out to make, bugs and glitches aside. It seems CD Projekt Red has a history of biting off more than they can chew. It just sucks Cyberpunk was the one to break their teeth. It's a tragedy to see a studio filled with so much talent get absolutely wrecked by poor decision making by upper management. Will Cyberpunk 2077 turn it around? While No Man's Sky is proof that even the biggest of bungled launches can make a huge comeback, I'm just not confident with Cyberpunk. Unlike Hello Games, a studio of 19 working tirelessly and silently to make their failed magnum opus truly special, CD Projekt Red is a huge publicly traded studio which can't spend years trying to make good on a rushed video game with years of huge patches, updates, free content, and the like. So, I guess if you need a moral to this tale of woe, it's this. Video games, at the end of the day, are a product, and thus are subject to corporate meddling just like anything else. We can't get overly excited and hyped and blindly trust companies, even if they have a good track record, as their interests aren't always in line with ours. But perhaps most importantly, it's to stop pre-ordering games, you stupid Hey, thank you all so much for watching our video on why Cyberpunk 2077 is such a disaster. If you want to know if the game itself is actually any good, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for my full review coming soon, as well as other equally based gaming content right here on Turnstile. Take care.